like you to with us. Okay, started. So I think I've met some of you before, but there's definitely some new names. Oh, we can see John. That's exciting. You can if you want. It's quite nice looking at someone. You won't be able to see us because
we've made a conscious decision not to do that.
We'll do them for a second so then they can see.
Yeah, all right, let's do that.
Okay, we'll give you a wave. Oh, hi, here we are. Now the video's going off so you can't see our awkward faces when we make mistakes. Oh, someone that you can't hear us. You should be able to hear us by now.
Unmute your
Hear us, everybody. Can someone confirm that you can hear us? I'm saying that you can hear us. Good. So people can hear, which is exciting. If you can't hear, then you won't be able to hear these instructions. So we'll carry on, and hopefully anybody that's having tech problems and sort those out. Someone would like to give assistance to Anu about sound. That would be very helpful because I'll be able to give her directions. Thank you, Jamie. That's helpful. So we're going to talk today for about 45 minutes. We're going to try not to go over that too much about Prove Me Wrong, which is the project that we're running at the moment about the impact of student opportunities. I'm Rosie Soffe. I'm a staff member at NUS with a responsibility for student opportunities, and I'm joined by Richard and Rob.
I'm Rob. I'm a policy officer here at NUS. My main job is to support Richard.
My name's Richard Brooks. I'm the current Vice President of Union Development of NUS.
Hopefully you have all introduced yourselves in the little chat bar. If you haven't done that yet, then please do, because it's really useful to know who we've got in the room. Thanks so much for joining us. There's quite a lot of you here today, which is really good, and we're really excited that you want to take part in the project. Let's get started. So what we're going to talk about today is a bit about the background of the impact work and specifically the Prove Me Wrong project, a bit about where it came from and why we're doing it and why it's called Prove Me Wrong. We're going to go through each of the 11 statements that are part of the Prove Me Wrong project and talk to you a little bit about how to collect the data, how you can talk about what we found and what we're expecting you to be able to show. There's loads of opportunities for you to ask questions and show your ideas. So if you've already started on your Prove Me Wrong stuff, feel free to share what you've done so far. We're really interested, and I'm sure everyone else is too. So if you've got anything, even if you've just had a conversation with a colleague about it, or if you've been doing some thinking for this webinar, then share you're up to at the moment. And with questions, please ask me questions. If you think something isn't clear, or if you're not sure about the language we've used, or if you don't understand what we mean by something, please ask, because that's the whole point of today's session, is to help you understand what this is all about and how you can use it, and then hopefully you'll be able to go away and confidently get involved with the project.
So, basically, one of the things that I have been doing since I got elected to this job, as well as when I was president at Hull, the UK City of 2017, Tony, by the way, is talk about student opportunities and basically pick them up. And there are two main things that come with this. One is that there is a sense from student unions more broadly that NUS doesn't do enough work in this area. Oh, hi Tony, again. And the second is that no matter how much, and this is where the quote on this slide is, no matter how much we walk around talking about how amazing student opportunities are, how great sports and societies and volunteering and fundraising and all of that is, what we fundamentally have been unable to do up until this point is to show that in any concrete way. And that's a massive problem, and that's a massive problem for three reasons. Because basically is that we are not going into meetings, we're not going to lobbying places, we're not speaking to all of the partners and the people we have to lobby, and we're not going there with concrete evidence or data or impact, and that's becoming more and more important in means that we've got VP Sports and VP Activities, as well as staff members who work within this area, who are ill-equipped to be able to show the impact of student opportunities, which are obviously, you guys know, Bruce University here, basically the engine rooms of student unions. So that's where I'm coming from in particular. And then the second bit in terms of why it matters 2 and 3 is, one, because of we are trying to do more and more NUS about supporting student unions on the ground. I mean by that is that there is very much a sense, and I imagine that, again, I'll be preached and converted here as sign officers who work within the realm of student ops, that NUS does not do enough in terms of reflecting the realities of what student unions do. And I don't think there is anywhere which is more obvious than in student opportunities, quite simply because student unions do a lot of, I was about to swear then, and I didn't, that's not good.
Well done.
Thank you. Student unions do a lot of work in student opportunities, and NUS does not that much. But secondly, because in the context of a wider attack on student unions, and you have all probably seen the Love SUs campaign, which was all about being able to articulate the value of student unions whilst we're being challenged. Student communities are a really good place to start. One, because, as I said before, they're the engine rooms of student unions, but two, because they're where some of the biggest impacts happen. So the background to this project, I guess, really is that know that student opportunities, student activities is what they're called, student unions obviously, are amazing. We're finding it incredibly harder to basically be able to articulate this to people who matter. So we are trying to do at NUS is to support these unions to come up the right data, right knowledge, the right information to be able to support you to win those arguments in and of, basically. And the complicated bit, the metric, is that you say? Yeah. I'm now going to pass over to this.
I'm going to talk to you about the methodology, but I don't know how to say the word. Yeah, so actually, I think Richard summed it up there by just saying that this is fundamentally about building the arguments that we want to make, both to institutions, vice chancellors, principals, or whatever, about you need to recognise the value of student opportunities, give us Wednesday afternoons free, give us more money, more respect, whatever, as well as kind of saying to government and or any interested kind of parties, look, student unions have a valuable place in society, and we need public support and funding and whatever else we're going to be looking for. Otherwise, our movement has a rocky future. So in terms of what NUS has done before, we've worked on this for about 7 years, one another, and we've done a fair few things. We've gone for the full bells and whistles toolkit. Turns out people find that too complicated and too abstract. And we've done kind of bespoke consultancy with students' unions, but tends to be quite a progress in that kind of area, although we're still doing some stuff at the moment actually on that. So this is a kind of way to try and say, right, let's take out a lot of the variables and give students' unions something that's right off the shelf, won't be advanced, won't be highly sophisticated, but will be simple and low resource to get us started and thinking about what it means to make a difference in the world with our work. So this whole piece was supposed to be a collaborative research piece, upskilling students' unions to be able to stuff, doing it with students' unions rather than NUS doing a big research piece for students' unions and handing you the evidence, which actually probably impossible because students unions vary so much across our 600 members, and in different kind of modes of study and that kind of stuff. And depending on your own priorities, right? What NUS might consider an impact in one area, you might think, nah, don't care about that. So, and then the final bit is about why is it called Prove Me Wrong. So we've made a series of statements, or Richard's made a series of statements about things don't do. And this is a research technique of evaluating the impact of something. Much easier to prove something is wrong rather than to say definitively you've made a different. And this, for those of you that are sciencey, this is called disproval hypothesis. But you don't necessarily need to know that. But in that, it's easier for you to prove something wrong than it is to prove something right. Okay?
Cool. Questions about the background to the project? If you have them down in the chat bar. Okay. So in terms of a timeline, and we'll go through this at the end as well. And also, I didn't say at the beginning, we will send you these slides via email, so don't worry about writing everything down. Just make notes for yourself, and you can also have the recording afterwards too. But in terms of the timeline, by the 1st of April, which is the end of this week, if you get involved, you need to email Richard, and his email address is at the end, and we'll remind you of that at the end of the webinar. And then you've got until 17th of June to collect evidence, create a poster, and submit it to us. So you pages, which is lovely, and hopefully, because of the times, you'll be able to tie that into stuff that you're already doing.
Richard whispered something very interesting.
What's Richard whispered?
Friday the 17th of June is my birthday.
Oh,
well, obviously we did that on purpose. So for Richard's birthday present, we'd like you all to create an A3 poster and to Richard saying happy birthday, here's some evidence. That's lovely, that's great. And from the 7th of July onwards, we're going to share the findings, and we're going to do that at Students' Union's conference in Liverpool. We're going to have a bit of a gallery, which is exciting. We'll also have some stuff on this at Lead and Change Student Opportunities. So new sabbatical officers coming in with the student ops remit. We'll have a little bit of information about this too. And also we'll put it online on NUS Connect, and we'll be sharing it a lot. So we're hopeful that people will see it. So what we're going to do now is go through each of the 11 themes that we've come up with for this project. We're hoping that you've read the pre-wrong information on NUS Connect already, because haven't, some of it will be a bit complicated. If you haven't, don't panic, because you can read it afterwards. Just make sure that you listen to what we're talking about now, and make sure you do read it before you get started, because there's lots of really useful information in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it in turns to just talk you through each of the themes and kind of translate it a bit, because some of the language is a bit complicated. And then for each theme, we'll give you a few minutes to kind of think about whether it's relevant to you, whether it's one that you're interested in. And if you've already decided that you're going to work on that theme, then you should let us know. So tell us in the chat bar. Also, if you've got questions about that specific theme, then ask them. So that's it. There we go. Cool. So first one, going to hand over to Rob. Keeping students in education.
Okay, start with. The basic format of this online is that this is a negative statement, and we're going to go into some detailed definitions of what this means, and then the kind of exercise, the guides, as it were, I'll split it into two stages. So the first stage we call part A, and it's about building a kind of quantitative argument from anything that happens to exist, anything you might be able to get your hands on, or indeed building your own space from surveys or interviews, in order to kind of be able to have some statistics, something that supports your case in the effort of like proving this wrong. And then part B is the second part. It's about kind of storytelling, and it's about taking more of a qualitative approach, gathering some testimonials, taking quotes, which paint your Students' Union in a positive light towards this. So in this instance, what we're saying is that look at your CLITES membership database, match it with the Institute's records of who's out, and like there's a caveat here that you might have to, be aware of data protection and ask the institution to do it on your behalf. And so that might build an evidence. You might be able to find a correlation between those who stayed in and those who dropped out. And the important part is part B, which is that you said to some of the people who haven't dropped out, and did you struggle? How did your Students' Union help? And get that kind of golden quote that sums up your Students' Union's contribution, as well as those who did, and kind of try and find out whether Students' Union made a difference. Fundamentally, it is all about whether Students' Union has made a difference. So, question for each of these things is, are you working on this? Pop it in the chat box if you've already started, or you've got some thoughts on it, or indeed if you have any comments or questions for us on our side. I'll wait here for a moment. what do you think about that? Thank you. We'll do this for each of them in turn. Okay.
About that,
What?
someone else has just joined, that's all.
Okay, delicious.
Okay, we'll go on. So I called this one Ensuring Equality of Opportunity. We're saying that students from marginalised groups are not encouraged to join clubs or societies as a result of attending Give It a Go events. On the information on the NUS Connect about the project, we've defined marginalised groups, but they depend on your institution and which groups are marginalised in your institution. This one came out of when we were doing the planning for this project. I had been talking to Leeds University Union, I think. They said that it was really clear. So then Give It a Go was really popular with international students, and it was the main way that they engaged with international students. And so it would be an interesting one to put in to see if you do run Give It a Go, whether there's an impact there on marginalised groups. And so you should, if you do run this sort of programme, you should already have some sort of data. I would expect that you'd evaluate it in some way based on who is attending and how many do they attend and that kind of thing. But also you can get some statements and quotes from people there on their Give It a Go events or after it's part of evaluation. It's quite an easy one if you're already running Give It a Go. I wouldn't encourage you to do it if you are already running Give It a Go. Like, don't try and start up and just so you can evaluate it, because that seems a bit complicated. So is anyone doing this one? Has anyone decided that they're going to do this one? Or does anyone have any questions about this one? If you have questions, you need to put them in the chat box. No? Okay.
What about that Q&A?
That we're explaining it incredibly well. Or of this world from where everyone thought we would be, that no one even knows how to ask a question about it. Either way. Look.
In your above the chat bar, you should have a hands up button and a tick box and a cross. So and there's a little emoji button too, like an emoticon button. So if you want to use them as well to say yeah, then do the tick. If you don't get it, do the cross, and then we can try explaining it again. We'll carry on because I think those two are less complicated than other ones. So we'll carry on, and then feel free to ask questions.
This one is all about facilitating good jobs for all. So basically, it's a step up from what a lot of us do, which is all around like talking about employability when it comes to clubs and societies. So what we're interested in is that those who take part in clubs and society, so that's just like your membership of whatever sports team, whatever society, whatever committee, however you structure them, how it makes an impact or a difference for their employment prospects. So whether or not they have good jobs, whether or not they like data from the institution, whether or not they feel like they're now more employable or have good prospects, particularly from disadvantaged backgrounds. And what we mean by basically is lower socioeconomic backgrounds in particular. And the reason why we've made that quite clear is because of student groups currently, although we don't have loads of hard and fast data on this, which is one of the reasons why we do this, a lot of them are made up of people from quite privileged backgrounds anyway, so people from mass backgrounds basically who would already have political, social and cultural capital, would already know how to network, so would have been taught to in school, all of that stuff. So basically what we're trying to figure out is if a working class kid get involved in a club and society, do they feel like that they are more likely to get a good job? Are they more likely to have good employment prospects? basically. And have any, same with Rosie and Rob, can you do a tick if you understand that, or do a cross if you think I'm talking nonsense, please?
Oh, that's nice. Got a few ticks.
Ticks are good.
The call-in users that you can't do the ticks. Oh, John's got a question. That's exciting. Oh, Andrew has said, couldn't volunteering be part of this? Absolutely. Just because we put clubs and societies, it doesn't mean that that's exclusive to clubs and societies.
So I do a lot of writing around this area, and I always find that student opportunities becomes quite a clunky phrase to try and put in every time. So probably where you see clubs and societies, it's nearly used interchangeably with student opportunities because we got bored of writing it. But that's what we mean. We mean clubs, societies, media, volunteering, anything that makes sense within your students' union, including enrichment.
So that is yes, basically. And then, John, do you know what sort of data institutions normally hold about socioeconomic background? Ours don't share much with us. So, oh, sorry, did you want to have this?
If you know, go for it.
No, but now I'm nervous that I don't know the answer. You answer, then I'll see if my one's different.
Okay, so the brilliant index to use for this, but the one that's quite prevalent, particularly throughout not street is polar data, which is a way of ranking a post based on how many people go to university from it. And it's a really crude measure of like socioeconomic background, and a fine guess that that's not the right phrase. It's fine. Your institution would probably hold, or at least can tell you the postcodes of your students, in which case you work it out yourself. And I've actually put a tutorial sheet online which tells you how to pull that information off based on the data that's available. And if you're struggling with that at any point, then do get directly in touch and I can help you through it.
Amy?
Oh,
too many.
So Amy has said, so from what you've said about gathering data, is it fair to say that this is more about how the student feels about their prospects, their confidence in their job, as opposed to actual employment data?
It's interesting that you asked that because basically we were having an argument about it before we did the webinar. So basically, I say argument. It was very gentle. We all love each other here. But basically, what we're trying to talk about, what we're trying to understand is that I was saying, from my perspective, it is easier for students' unions to look at stuff like data, destination, leaver surveys from universities or from colleges who will compile all of that and then say, all right, if you're involved in the sports team or society, you got a good job at the end of it because we know that, and it's easy to track that. What we're saying, what would you like to say? Your point. But it's not convoluted.
Yeah. So this is all kind of argument that all employability debate. Basically, it's really hard to find out whether an individual is employable because the only way measuring it is where they are employed, and they're quite different things because we tend to have quite a failing jobs market, particularly for young people, as well as like kind of quite entrenched issues, which means that unless you kind of strike it lucky, chances are your first job is going to be coming off the back of like your own personal network. But an students' union can have a really good bash at breaking down some of these barriers, but it's really, really hard to measure. So first instance, in the spirit of keeping things as simple as possible, both for students, students' unions, we've said, all right, let's take the first stage of this, which is leaving their students feel like they've had a good, they're starting from a good place in terms of their confidence and expectations. And then after that, we can start to have a wider debate amongst ourselves about how to evaluate where they actually get a job. But, take a guide. If you think you can do it better, I'm sure many of you can, and you have finer brains than we do, then, see what we find and report back, and we'll update the Prove Me Wrong guides online to reflect what you learned. Because I think that's the other thing. These are all completely draft. And the reason we put them on Connect is because we want to be changing them and updating them based on your experiences.
Your question, Amy. Yes, but have a bit of a bash at everything. Is the answer.
Yeah.
Rob's not intelligent people, I know, but sometimes he overcomplicates things.
So, so yes, but have a bash at everything. If you can get hold of your deli data, get hold of it, as much info as possible.
It will depend. Some of your institutions will really prioritise this and will have lots of this stuff already. Some of them won't, and so you might have to do more of the work yourself. So it may that because there's already stuff available, this one's quite easy for you to look at. Well, the next one, altruism.
Oh God, sorry. So this is about fundraising. It's relatively straightforward. We're looking at attitudes towards charitable giving, what their opinion of charity is, and what they think a reasonable amount to give to charity from their salary is, per month or per week or whatever. A straightforward survey comparing one group of students' responses to another. I just did if anyone's already kind of thought about putting this forward. Like, has anyone think that they're going to try and attempt to evaluate this in their own students' union?
Yeah, just jumping back, Amy, I think that's a really good point. For the rest of no one can read it. Yeah, okay. And so Amy put, based on the previous point around good employment prospects, I imagine yes was in response to does that make sense? And then she's written, I think is that it's important to talk about impact you can actually prove you've had, if that makes sense. Either we gave students skills and confidence as opposed to we guarantee our students jobs, which absolutely does make sense to me.
Yeah, couldn't put it better myself.
Yeah. And that kind of ethos to it is exactly how we like you to approach all of the areas in that, like, what can you prove, and that. Questions about number 4, about one that Rob's just talked through.
If not, what's
fundraising?
Sure.
Okay. Slowing down climate change.
Oh dear, here we go.
Oh, someone.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
Okay, right, go back.
Oh, go back. Sorry. Yeah.
So going back to number 4, Amy. So do you mind if we read this?
Yeah. People who've called in.
Okay, so it's been put privately. Okay. This number 4 is an example of me of something I've been thinking, which is that a lot of these negative statements suggest negative impact to student ops as opposed to just a lack of impact. Starting from the point of disproving negative statements, if anyone is making that negative statement, and if nobody is making those negative assertions, should just need to, we need to not just disprove the negative, but prove a positive in order for our data stories to public interest, in which case, why start from the point of disproving negative statements?
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we started off writing this project, we did talk about it as a positive statement. So we were like students are to be committed to charitable giving because of the stuff they do with and student fundraising. That's where we started from too. But insight and research experts at NUS just basically said, yeah, that's really good, and that's a really good thing to prove. But scientifically, it's better to talk about it in terms of proving a negative statement wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that when you produce your A3 poster that summarises your findings, you don't have to talk about it in a negative way. You can say, we've proven the statement that NUS gave us wrong because we have shown that, 20% of our students that get involved in RAG are more likely to be altruistic afterwards. I think Amy has made a really good point about we didn't necessarily be talking about this in a negative way. We were intending to shout about it in a negative when we've got the findings, when we need to be positive about it and to use this to prove the excellent stuff that you do.
Just jump in because I completely agree with everything Rosie just said. But the only thing I'd add to that, which is addressing one of your points about starting from a negative place in terms of what student ops are perceived, is that to anyone who's probably listening to this webinar and to like Rosie, Rob, and I, it's utterly obvious that student opportunities are a good thing, B, have an impact on individuals and wider society, like to the point where it's almost not worth. I get bored of saying it because it just seems so obvious. It's really interesting, and may have a think about this if we go down the list as well. Is that if you look at different things that people say student ops and match that are negative and match them to these statements, actually a lot of them do stuff in really negative places. So when I get challenged politically within like NUS structures, people don't say to me student ops are useless or don't have an impact. And a lot of the time they say student ops create a sense of lad culture, or student ops are only for privileged students, or ops create a culture of fear on campus, or as the ones that you probably all heard, sports teams control the student union, or like that all of that stuff, right? Actually, everything Rosie just said is totally correct, and I think while scientifically it makes sense to start from this way and do it in a positive way, I also need to be realistic about the fact that not everyone just thinks straight student opportunities are great like we do. I think it's quite important.
But it's really helpful. Yeah, good for Amy. So this one is a fairly simple one. If any of you already take part in Green Impact, you might have some data on this already. So with student social action in the community is doing nothing to slow down climate change, which is pretty extreme. It could, in terms of collecting the data, the first half of this, and if you're doing Green Impact already, you've probably got about a lot of this stuff. So link up with the people, it might be yourself, but link up with whoever it is that's doing impact. If you're not doing impact, that's not a problem. And on the Prove Me Wrong pages on NUS Connect, we've explained how you can collect some quantitative data about this. And this is the second part about this in terms of the positive stories. There's something there around the value that your wider community places on the stuff that students do to do with sustainability and climate change and green volunteering. And the term social action is one that's being kind of thrown around in the sector a lot at the moment. But by social action, we basically mean doing good, whether that's doing good for other students or doing good in the community, doing good with local schools, etc. That's social action means. About that one.
Ticks
And cross. Does that make sense to people? Yeah. Oh, look. We'll go on to the next one then, because I'm really conscious of time. I don't want us to not talk each of them. So, shaping active citizens.
So this one's quite simple. So it's basically about exposure to democratic processes in student ops. And particularly what we mean by that is going to AGMs to elect the new committee, voting in things, making decisions on stuff within your sports team, society, volunteering, fundraising, and how it influences a student's further participation in politics. So basically, being able to measure and map out if a student goes to an AGM, runs for a committee position, votes for a thing, as most of your teams, societies will do, how it influence their further participation in wider politics. Do they vote in general elections? Do they join political groups? Do they sign a petition? That sort of thing. So that's all it is, really.
Yeah.
And we've got some nice measures from the British Social Attitude Survey, which are just kind of yes/no answers, like where they take part in, like what groups they're affiliated to, and what forms of action they take part in.
Mm-hmm.
Katie's asked, does this include things like student elections for officers, etc.?
I say that it does. The only reason I say that is because it's actually a bit of a jump to get from someone to elect a new president of like the netball league team, to get them to vote for the new president of the students' union. And I think it's like another thing on the step in a political journey. So I would say yes, that it does. So Connor, who I'm assuming is from Exeter.
To an extent, it depends on how to separate people in your own like doing it. So if you're like to be more straightforward, to find students who have taken part in electing people in societies and student groups, because you get them easier from people who voted in general. I was going to ask a similar question about union council forums, etc., which don't traditionally fall under the remit of student ops. Same thing. I think you.
Another thing now, sorry. So I think what Katie and John are asking, and give me like a big old thumbs cross. Give me a cross if you're saying it wrong. So there are if I'm saying it wrong. So there are two separate bits to this. One is the democratic processes in student ops. And the second bit is a student's further participation in politics. When it comes to what democratic processes in student ops is, I would suggest that the only things that come under that are things that are directly related to that sports team, society, volunteering. So it would be the AGM for that group. It would be electing the committee for that group, that sort of stuff. So that's number one. Number two is the bit which you are both asking about, which I would consider participation in politics, which is student action for student union officers more widely, or going to union council or forums. So I would suggest under the second part, which is further participation in politics, as to the democratic processes in student ops. And for that is because, as I said, it's actually a bit of a leap to go from electing your new social sec of your team as opposed to union council.
Yeah, and they all said that all elections are delivered by the activities department, so it would fall under the remit of opportunities. That's fine. Basically, basically whatever you look at is up to you. Just make sure that when you're reporting back, you just is that you were looking at. So Emma's case at Keele, just flag the fact that activities elections, and so that is part of of opportunities with you.
And welcome, Katie O'Connor.
So moving on to positive mental health.
Okay, one for the sport days. So we have a nice indicator of regular physical activity, which we've taken from Sport England. With that, if you take part in at least 3 periods of 30 minutes moderate intensity exercise, then we sort of deemed as like doing regular physical activity. And we use a survey of students to find out whether they meet that criteria. Actually, against like students' report on their mental health. And again, like taking things relatively simply, we've got a few data taken from the National Being Survey, which is very high happiness yesterday, very low anxiety yesterday, and very low stress yesterday, which is a kind of generation of, like, as many of those boxes you can take as a nice way of kind of judging whether people have good personal well-being. So A is about building a kind of quantitative graph, and then part B is just generally about interviewing a few students and getting their perspectives on how doing regular physical activity to students' union has helped them in that respect. That one should be relatively cut and dry.
You might find that if you have a wellbeing department in your university or college, that they have some of this data already.
And quite sports departments in institutions as well. So loads of institutions are doing this thing there. Together well-being, which includes mental and physical health together. So like our director of sport at Hull, UK City of Culture 2017, was put in charge of the well-being strategy, which included so a tip from Tony, which included not just how many students participated in sport and all of that bit, but also like mental well-being, how many people use certain services as well, because they saw them as joined up. So you departments, as well as potentially your sports bit as well.
One is particularly imminent from a government perspective because they've just launched a new sports strategy. So I would expect that if we find some interesting stuff here, they might be quite interested in it.
As an aside, they're linking all national sports funding to the impact that so if you have impact in this area, then move on. No, I'm a massive evidence fine. I'm not guaranteeing.
Does anyone have any questions about ensuring positive mental health? Is then doing this one?
Crosses.
Any ticking crosses? Any questions? You've ticked any crosses yet, which is lovely, but maybe you're all just really polite.
Could be.
Oh, someone. Okay, I'm going to move on to this one. Number 8, building communities. This is my favourite one. I'm not sure I have a favourite. Taking part in or spectating at varsity events doesn't improve community cohesion for students and local communities. So if any of you that run a varsity against another students' union or institution, this is just about whether or not that has a positive impact on community cohesion. So one was included because on the surface, varsity looks like it's just about, it's a fun, nice sporting event. And actually, this might have a bigger impact than that in terms of making people feel like they're part of something bigger, they're part of a big community. And in American universities, it really place as a thing that they offer as a good event thing for students, and I don't think we necessarily do that very well in the UK. So, yes, that's on this one.
I also have a question from Katie O'Connor, which is the EU athletic union sport is separate at Exeter. Is there any examples that could perhaps fit that aren't sport? I imagine that's about number 7, which is the mental health wellbeing one.
Yeah, you could just clarify, Katie, whether you're talking about mental health one. I think if you are, you probably use. I'll just go back to it so you can know what we're talking about. You could about varsity.
Oh, I'm wrong. Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll have a think about that.
Basically, if you have like varsity chess, like the same principle applies because it's how you sort of frame it, right? So if it's all about like, get together as a community, take on X opponents, then it doesn't really necessarily matter what it is.
That he's going to do an alternative for cultural group cohesion on around the world event. Cool. Good.
So yes, you can do stuff that isn't necessarily just sport.
I think you can probably get the way we're talking about it is that these start as for 10, and we're not going to tell you off and kick you off the project if you don't stick perfectly to what we've suggested, because, and said the local community is maybe slightly different for cities with unis like Sheffield where there's rivalry. Yeah, really good point. On to the next one now. So, reducing racism.
So basically, this one is all about when student ops groups run cultural and faith awareness projects. So when ISOC runs like an Islamic Faith Awareness Week, when there are cultural exchanges, everything from everyone brings in foods from their own culture all the way through to awareness weeks at certain faith and cultural groups. They do events or projects like that. How it affects the levels of prejudice and racism within your student population. And we had another interesting conversation about this before in terms of here in this little tiny cupboard that we're in, which is what we mean by race, prejudice in general, which is probably the best way of measuring this is to ask people, students, about their own self-assessed levels of prejudice. And what I mean by that is basically that if you go to a dinner for Malaysian students, for instance, and talk about Asian culture, and then ask people afterwards, is your understanding of a different culture higher or lower? Did you have any particular stereotypes that have now been busted by this, so and so forth? That's probably the best way of gauging it.
Or certainly the least worst.
Or the least worst way of gauging it, because there's obviously lots of different ways of talking about structural oppression, and that could be everything, really crude measures about hate figures and hate crimes, all the way through to the way in which oppressed groups feel on campus. But that was probably the least worst way, as in the best way we can think of measuring it.
That's not our assessment. So we've got a British Social Attitude Survey question, and they've come back and said, do it this way.
Basically.
And then the website on NUS Connect, where we've explained the project, there's some ideas for how you can collect this data, so that, because obviously it's a bit more sensitive than some of the other ones, so we've given you some suggestions on the website about how to do that. Send-ins or ticks and crosses, just to say got it or don't get it. And if you don't get it and want us to explain any more, then just drop us a question.
I've just been told by a former sabbatical officer that I worked with, who now works in your student union, that I keep mentioning Hull too much, so I apologise.
Oh dear.
You've been Hull a lot.
I do.
Bit fun.
I am.
Okay. We'll go on to number 10. And if you haven't had your questions answered yet, we can pick them up at the end. So, number 10, empowering disabled students.
Okay, so we wanted to do one looking at impacting kind of a specific liberation group. So you're thinking about power. Okay, I'm going to pass over that question for a minute. Where the experiences gained through student opportunities were useful for, so either in the case of like job applications and interviews, which obviously is, you know, a kind of key part of living in our society, or in any kind of like entrepreneurial context as well. So it's about saying, you know, did experience your jobs and societies help, and how did their students' union kind of contribute towards that, kind of bringing a story towards it, and then repeat this across any liberation group that you feel it applies to.
Do you want to just explain liberation just in case?
Yeah, really quickly. You know, rest groups including disabled students, women students, black students, and LGBT plus students.
Is this one about theme number 10? Ticks and cross, got it or not got it? Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Home straight.
Okay, last one then. A nice, I think an easy one. About bridging social divides. So a negative statement we've said is students do not make friends with people outside their social circles through student opportunities. Sure, even with just us in this space, we could all list a handful of examples of students who've said that made their best friends through club societies and volunteering and RAG, etc.
This is like a localized version of that, like SUSI thing, where like students came together to bridge like the ultimate social divide in Northern Ireland. So like, how do you do it locally? Sorry, I just have an idea and I want to say.
Okay, that's fine. And on the Prove Me Wrong pages on NUS Connect, there's a series of questions that you can ask that go into the social divides part of this in more depth. So I'm not going to explain that in detail because I think it's outlined better than I can explain it in words because the questions are all there for you. So.
I've also just been told that asking people to tick sounds like a euphemism, so I'm going to stop doing that.
Okay. Because we're getting close to 2 o'clock, I'm going to wrap up and explain the last few slides now. So hand over to Rob to talk about research.
On the pages online, some kind of some basic tips on how to do research, and I hope that kind of gives you a bit of an idea about some kind of FAQs. With something on how many students you might need to survey based on how many people are in your institution. So in general, where I put down the numbers like 370, I've just assumed that like a size university or large college of about kind of 1,000 students, but you might need to adapt that if you're kind of small and specialist or something like that. I've included a small piece on statistical significance, but this is about saying, you know, we should say that something is extremely unlikely to be down to pure chance. In the interest of time, I'm just going to gloss over this one quickly.
And I would say these are all explained in more depth on the pages, so don't worry that we're going quickly through them.
Happy to you know, discuss with people offline if necessary. And then John, this is that point about appendices earlier, which is about, you know, very different postcodes. You can start an impression of a person's socioeconomic background. It's not ideal, but there aren't necessarily better ways of doing it that are simple. I've got some tips on how to use that online as well. Okay, so a reminder of what you need to do now. If you're still keen and haven't been put off by this webinar, which we hope you haven't, email Richard by Friday, and it doesn't need to be complicated. You can literally just say we're in. That's just so that we know and we've got a list of people that want to join the project, and then start collecting. So decide on which of the themes you're going to cover. We would encourage you to not do all of them. So try and do 11 because you probably have time. If you can do 11, then let us know because that's exciting. Kept chunking.
You get a Kit Kat from Rob if you manage all 11. So things that you're interested in, have a chat with colleagues. Something that everyone in your student union should be interested in because it crosses over a lot of different areas. So don't see yourself. And then basically you've got until the 17th of June, Richard's birthday.
If we can't, can we not read that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, well, we've just recorded this and it's going to go disconnect. So.
That's right. No, I'm not saying disconnect.
Richard!
That is now Prove Me Wrong Day rather than anyone's birthday. And Friday the 17th of June, just send a A3 poster. If you want, you can handcraft that and draw it out, or get one of your designers to do it, or design it yourself. We don't mind as long as it can be printed A3 and is good quality when it's printed. That's all we want, to explain what you found from the project.
And can I be, you may have felt a little bit led up the garden path, which is that, oh, this sounded like a really interesting thing to do. How do we get involved? And then we started talking about big numbers, like thousands, hundreds or thousands of students. One of the things that I would suggest thinking about, and this is one of the reasons this piece of work is happening now, is a lot of you will be doing like your rate union, state of the union, end of year survey stuff that will be like across your students' union, but also within your different departments, like with relating stuff, in particular because now like election season's over. So I think about how you could potentially embed questions or surveys or evidence bases in that. Like, don't always feel like you have to just create a mass new stream of work. A lot of you will already be evaluating impact of stuff. Like, suggestion is that you just evaluate the impact of these things. Yeah,
and other stuff that we asked you to look at, you will have, or your institution will have, so it might just be a case of seeing that information out. Submit your poster by 17th of June, and then we'll be sharing things from Students' Unions Conference onwards. So that's the timeline, basically. Louise has said that it all makes sense. Thank you. We have activity awards coming up. Would be great. So then you can never mention Hull enough, Richard.
Thank you.
So we've gone over by 3 minutes, but if you've got any questions, please write them down now. Or if you just want to say that it didn't make sense, just give it a bit back so we know where you're up to with this, where your head's at. In terms of follow-up resources, we will send you these slides. We'll send them this afternoon so you've got them so they're fresh in your mind. The recording takes a few for it to kind of get loaded and then re-uploaded to YouTube. But once we've got that, we'll email that to you as well. And then all of our email addresses are on the screen now. So if you want to email any of us, all of us, and then we will reply and help you out if you need help. Do it on your own, just because we've kind of said you've got until mid-June to do this. Keep it us throughout the process and let us know how you're getting on. Or need any help from us, we're here to help.
Before I say bye and we sign off, Amy, really short answer to your question. Yes, we are absolutely going to be doing more and more stuff on impact and how we basically measure the impact of students' unions in the US. And yes, we would definitely be interested to see further impact reporting stuff, basically.
Yeah, this is the start, not the end.
Yeah, this is the start of this, and a lot of this we're kind of doing is a bit of a dry run in the run-up to Project 100, because any post this summer, once we launch the new strategic framework, needs to get a lot better at understanding the impact that students' unions have, how we let that data nationally, and then how we share that amongst people, basically. So we are basically a pilot for how you do this to make sure the entirety of the student movement for everything the students' unions do can start to be done from basically next year.
And we know best at doing things like this in student ops anyway.
Yeah, because student ops are great. That's great, you are correct. Thank you very much.
Any other questions before we finish off? Any about any of the specific things that you haven't asked so far, or any other questions that you had coming into this webinar we haven't managed to answer yet? Well, thank you, which is good.
Excellent. An exclamation mark there.
Thumbs up.
Jamie Robertson.
Thank you. John's waving with the emoji. That's cool.
Right, all this positive
Yeah.
feedback. Yeah, I just want to say then finally, I'm getting a phone call from stuff, but no, I'm not. That's someone else. Just want to say finally, thank you very much for being interested enough in this to be part of the webinar and be being more interested in terms of taking part in the Prove Me Wrong project. This, I think, is the start of like a number of different steps that NUS do to start taking student opportunities a lot more seriously, or being far better at supporting student unions to win stuff. The only way we're going to do this, as Rosie and Rob said at the start, is if we work like with and through student unions, and we don't want this to be another thing that NUS does that just drops on student unions that isn't particularly helpful to anyone, which we're doing it in this way, which takes longer, but way better. So I just want to say personally thank you, because this is like I am particularly passionate about. And the other thing I was going to say was, it's a visit from either myself as a vice president or as any of the staff members working on this, Rosie and Rob, to help you with this in terms of helping you understand the data, helping you collect the data. I have to go out and like talk to a bunch of students. It's basically my favourite part of my job. Please do just email me or Rob in particular, who helps with like sending me to places. So please do that as well, if that's what you'd like. That's it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.